Welcome to Wani Vitek here with one and only Ihsahn. Thank you so much for joining in today's
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be part of it.
album. Like Arktis, a completely different side of you, as expected, definitely will be out in a week. So, I really want to know the level of excitement which is there in you because it's been a while since the last album came out. It's been a little about 3 to 4 years since the last one came out.
No, Das Seelenbrechen came out in 2013, but that was only 1.5 years after the Eremit albums.
Yeah.
Those two albums were pretty close,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really, spent, any more time in the writing process. But I guess 1 year was kind of just dedicated to the focus on doing these emperor shows and everything that we did in 2014.
Right.
So I kind of just with resetting the musical parameters, I guess, with the Sandbrecht and doing something totally different,
True.
and then doing the emperor things. It was very nice to kind of start over again and kind of approach this album with some kind of freshness.
That's absolutely true, and by now you would have received reports from the press and your fans, who have listened to a couple of tracks. How's it been so far for you? Because you experiment a lot, so I know you really must be thinking, okay, how are people gonna react to these kind of songs?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I have some experience now with having released albums for over 20 years.
True.
And what I expect and how people react, it never matches out. so I've got to learn to trust, not to know.
No.
So I mean, even people perceive the early Emperor albums also to be kind of instant success stories.
Right.
Which they were, of course, not.
True.
It's just given time, that people change perspective
Right.
and what can I say? I mean, with the contents of the previous album, which was much more focused on the spontaneous and improvisation and everything,
Right.
I thought I was very happy with how that came out.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I thought it was probably commercial suicide, because
Right.
I thought people will not get this.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, people did, and I think maybe I've done so many different things that people expect to be surprised,
Right.
and that the next album may be something totally different. but for me in general, I honestly I don't really consider any of that when I write music, because
Yeah.
at this point I just try to keep myself on my toes, excited and enthusiastic about what I do.
Absolutely.
And a privilege of being a solo artist, instead of having your music be a compromise of
Yes.
what happens in a band. I think it's great to be able to take different angles and different approaches for each album.
Indeed.
And so that the process for me is interesting, and I think that is the only way I can make something hopefully interesting to listen to.
Absolutely right, because your creative journey has been one of the most interesting ones, in at least in the extreme music, because the increasing experimentation throughout your career has we've heard it all, and whether be it with Emperor or your solo work, it's been there. But I always wondered what inspired you to explore so much. I mean, you literally spread your wings across various genres of music.
Well, I just guess I just love a lot of different music, and I guess I come to the age where I only really have two categories, and that is music that does something for me,
Mm-hmm.
and music that don't really do anything for me at all on
Right.
any level. So it's good music and it's bad music for me.
Mm-hmm.
As a musician, I mean, there are really two routes, and I think I brought it up as an example lately with, for example, you see the death of Lemmy,
Yeah.
and how he was such a huge icon for being, a constant,
Right.
being Lemmy and doing the same exact thing through his entire career.
True.
And soon after, David Bowie dies.
David Bowie. Right.
Yeah, and he's just as big an icon, but for being a chameleon throughout
Yeah.
his career, he explored, basically anything, through his entire career, but still maintained the integrity of being David Bowie.
Yes, exactly.
So I guess we're just different. That some people, for them it's best to go the AC/DC route. Which is admirable in its own sense. That
Yeah.
to really just kind of do that one thing.
Yeah, the simpler stuff.
Yeah, but also which at the same time has fantastic appeal. But I guess for me and my personality, this kind of curiosity about how I can stretch my imagination and try different things is more appealing.
Right.
So and in a way I've had this great opportunity to do such experiments and to follow my heart and be very uncompromising in my music. So and I think and people have bought my albums and come to the shows and everything for so many years, and I think I owe it both to myself but also to those who care to listen to my stuff, that I keep that in mind and don't start compromising now. Why?
Right, totally get that. It's wonderful to hear because like you were telling about the number of risks you take is very important, because music which comes out of Ihsahn as more like there's jazz, there's avant-garde, there are other musical feelings inside it, and in Arktis as well, it's that direction of unorthodox compositions and that great musicianship and even the sense of emotion that is attached to it. And that's something where you connect very, very easily, because it allows a listener to listen to the album freely. It musically flows along with the sentiments. Does that come natural to you when you write songs?
Well, thank you. That was very kind of you to say. I mean, people, I guess, from outside the music, I think it's easier to perceive music as or my music, to be very, as I say, jazz oriented or anything. For me, it's just a palette of stuff I like and different sounds, really. And I think the genre of music is really just dependent on how you put the music together with different instruments.
Right.
I mean, if even if some of my parts may sound jazzy and I choose a kind of jazz associated sound to it, if I played it with a slightly different rhythm, the same theme and with a slightly different rhythm and with other instruments, it might sound like something else.
Right.
So it's really the sounds that kind of dictate what these influences. But I'm glad you said that. What I find most important in what you said is the kind of the passion.
Yeah, the sentiments, and the emotion.
The emotion in it, because at the end of the day, that is what matters. That is what is supposed to be communicated. And I guess particularly with this album, I just worked from really just one idea for each song, and which I felt kind of carried that emotion that I was going for. So just as an example, I mean, for a song like Until I To The Soul, it started out with this 80s metal sound, heavy riff.
Right.
Yeah, and then I kind of went in that direction for that song and kind of carved the song out from that idea and built the song and the arrangement and the sounds around that. As for South Winds, it started with this kind of filtered synth riff.
Right.
Bass line, and then I just built the song from that. So even though I still kind of in my mind space, I'm still kind of wanting to create or write cohesive albums. I'm not writing singles.
Right.
I'm still kind of in that album state of mind. But at the same time, I always had an admiration for pop records, for example, where the instrumentation and the sounds and how the songs were arranged were more based on what the song needed rather than who was in the band.
Right.
So you have records that have more diversity in the arrangements and more individuality to each song.
Right.
But because I think they managed to carve out what the song needs and not just have the same production and the same expression on all the songs, which is kind of typical for
Yes.
this genre.
Definitely, it is. It's wonderful to hear because let me take an example like a song "Pressure," which is like it's got a good amount of heaviness, a good amount of technicality, but the most impactful part was the powerful emperor style riffing over symphonies. Now that's something I've been waiting for all these years, and although it was short lived, I think it was well worth it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't really give it too much thought,
Hmm.
whether to, uh, but because what can I say? Even though I explore a lot of different sounds,
Hmm.
I think at the heart of what I do, there will always be, these type of screaming vocals
Right.
and distorted guitar, because that's kind of my main voice, if you will.
True.
So playing a distorted guitar and doing vocals like in that black metal style is
Hmm.
kind of second nature. So
Right.
that is how I can most easily express myself in a very honest and emotional way.
Way. Hmm.
But then uh, I like to expand on that with all kinds of other different things to to try and stretch my creativity to really just for my own enjoyment.
Right. Right.
And so for me, when I feel the song is going in that direction,
Hmm.
of course, you know that as you mentioned it, more of an emperor sounding
Yeah.
kind of theme in the middle of the song. It's just it's, I guess, part of my repertoire,
Yeah.
part of my color palette in a way. So
Yeah.
I don't
Definitely.
really think about escaping from anything or steering
Okay.
away from anything.
It's a natural progression for you, even in terms of lyric, because lyrics it's got that sort of helplessness in an uncertain sort of a darkness, claustrophobic feeling surrounding this uncertainty. It's really great to see how it feels to me that you've spent a good amount of time because the album is also your longest in, let's say, in your catalog. So there's a good amount of time you have spent in terms of lyrical approach and that simplistic artwork which has a lot of meaning behind it.
Yeah, I mean the artwork came as an extension of the title Arktis,
Hmm.
and Arktis became also an extension of reviewing the themes that I took up in lyrics. And of course
Right.
there are songs like My Heart Is of the North and The Crooked Red Line. It's
Hmm.
metaphorically placed in this kind of landscape. And I guess at this point I also reflected a lot on my geographical positioning and how that has affected me growing up and becoming a person and becoming a musician for
Right.
that matter in this environment.
Hmm.
And obviously it's natural for me to express myself metaphorically,
Hmm.
in what I know, in images of what I know.
Right.
And with the title Arktis, which is the Norwegian word, my first Norwegian title,
Right.
I guess it's I ended up using pictures taken by Norwegian explorer Fridtjof
Okay.
Nansen
Hmm.
on his expedition towards the North Pole in the late 1800s.
Oh,
So and this I was actually given permission by the Norwegian National Library to use his pictures.
nice.
And of course he used almost 4 years, I think, on this expedition, and he actually never reached the North Pole.
Oh,
But I won't go into details. But it's a fascinating story,
wow.
but the whole idea of, I think, as a metaphor, as a parallel to this kind of black metal individual state of mind,
Yes, yes.
leaving the comfort of of Norway
So
to
the
to
essence
kind
of
of
Norway.
yeah, but really just I mean, to me, the Arctic landscape is absolutely beautiful,
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's a really hostile environment.
true, true.
And nonsense, just passion, courage, enthusiasm, and excitement
Right.
to kind of find his way through this landscape and reach, you know,
The
the top of
destination.
the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is something that no one had done before.
Hmm.
That state of mind, it's something that I at least admire a lot, and something that is an inspiration and something that I want to aspire to. Uh, even though of course making music is far safer
Right.
than going to the North Pole.